Afonso Henriques was born in 1109, son of Dona Teresa and Dom Henrique. After his father's death, his mother became a queen. She wanted an alliance with Spain, but her son Dom Afonso Henriques, with only 14 years old, and a few nobles, wanted the independence of Portugal. So they started a war on 1128 in a battle called Batalha de São Mamede. Dom Afonso Henriques won the battle and became the first king of Portugal. Thanks to that, Portugal became an independent kingdom. Dom Afonso Henriques was a remarkable king because he conquered numerous lands such as Santarém, right after Lisboa, Sintra, Almada, Palmela, Alcácer do Sal, Évora, Moura e Serpa. Dom Afonso Henriques died in 1185. He became well known as o Conquistador.
The Portuguese discoveries were a series of sea trips made by the Portuguese between 1415 and 1543. They had three major motives. The first one was the attempt to control the eastern trade routes, putting an end to the middleman traders who were mostly Arabs and Muslims. The second reason was to expand Christianity. The third was to search for raw materials and develop new markets. Finally, there was the need, curiosity, and attempt to end with certain myths, such as the myth of the earth being flat or the idea of the existence of monsters in unknown lands. The conquest of Ceuta in 1415 is considered the beginning of the Portuguese discoveries in which Infante Dom Henrique has taken part. Later, he became the great booster of most of the discovering enterprises. Between 1418 and 1427 were discovered the islands of Madeira and Azores, which still belong to the Portuguese territory. The sailors gone down the west coast of Africa, several discoveries were made. In 1434, Gilianos rounded Cape Pojador. In 1487, Bartolomeu Dias commanded an expedition with 3 ships reaching the Cape of Good Hope, originally called the Cape of Storms, established itself as a nautical connection between the Atlantic and Indian Ocean, and reestablished the hope of reaching India by sea. Meanwhile, Castella initiated a period of discoveries that forced Portugal and Castella to reach agreement on future discoveries. In that agreement, which came to be known as the Treaty of Tordesilhas, Portugal and Spain divided the world into 2 parts by a vertical meridian 370 leagues which lay on the islands of Cape Verde. In the years that followed the Treaty of Tordesilhas, the Portuguese continued with his desire to reach India, succeeded in 1498 by the hand of Vasco da Gama. The discovery of sea road to India was the biggest step taken so far by the Portuguese navigation enterprise. Although there are some who say that Brazil was already known by the Portuguese at the time the Treaty of Tordesilhas was signed, it is generally accepted by historians that its discovery was made in 1500 by Pedro Álvares Cabral. Achievements and discoveries led Portugal, a peripheral country in Europe with a population of less than 1 million people, to control the eastern trade, expanding the Christian faith, and founding an empire that lasted until the handover of Macau to China in 1999.
Day is a holiday celebrated in Portugal each year on December 1st to mark the restoration of national independence against Spain in 1640, which for 60 years occupied the country and oppressed. The death of Dom Sebastião in the Battle of Alcácer Quibir, despite the succession of Cardeal Dom Henrique, led to a dynastic crisis. In the courts of Tomar in 1580, Philip II of Spain is acclaimed King of Portugal. For 60 years, Portugal was under control by the Philippine dynasty with the kings Philip I, II, and III. In 1640, a group of conspirators, composed by nobles, welcomed the Duke of Bragança as King of Portugal with the title of King João IV, beginning the 4th dynasty, House of Bragança. In the following 28 years, Portugal was able to stop the successive attempts of invasion by the Spanish army, signing the final peace treaty in 1668.
On the 5th of October of 1910, due to a widespread dissatisfaction, the parliamentary monarchy was replaced by a republic whose first president was Manuel da Riaga. Nowadays, this day is celebrated by the Portuguese as a national holiday.
In 1914, the Portuguese government decided to enter the First World War on side of England. Only in 1916, with the confiscation of all German ships that were on the Portuguese coast to be used by the Allies, was Portugal definitely active in the war on European soil. The Portuguese Expeditionary Corps CAP was the main military force of Portugal during the First World War. Through its active participation in war efforts against Germany, the Republican government sent to France this military unit aiming to have leverage and rewards at the end of the maintenance of the colonies in Africa with the victory of the Allies. Portugal also sent to France another force, smaller and less famous, the Body of Independent Heavy Artillery, CAPI. The CAPI was a response to a request for help from the French. The CAPI would be under the command of French army and later it became known as the Corps Artillerie Lourde Portuguese, CLLP, which operated super heavy artillery for the railway. The departure of thousands of men to Flanders led to the national discontent due to the huge expenses that the government had to bear. The main battle of CAP was the Battle of Lys, which took place on April 9, 1918, in Flanders in the Ypres sector. In this battle, the German armies caused a huge loss to the Portuguese troops, the largest Portuguese military disaster after the Battle of Alcácer Quibir in 1578. This battle was the first and last significant confrontation of the CAP in World War I.
The Coronation Revolution, or Revolução dos Cravos, was a largely bloodless military coup which occurred in the nation of Portugal in 1974. The result of the Coronation Revolution was the end of a dictatorship which had prevailed for about 40 years. After a brief period of turmoil, Portugal emerged as a democratic country, to the great delight of many of its citizens and the world in general. The history of this event began in 1926, when a military coup established Estado Novo, new state, commanded by Salazar, overthrowing the nascent First Republic of Portugal, a democratic government which had replaced Portugal's monarchy in 1910. Portuguese citizens chafed under the Estado Novo, but the end of this regime was ultimately brought about by the actions of the military rather than the citizens. Military officers with left-wing inclinations masterminded their coup status in response to the sacking of a Portuguese general who spoke out against Portuguese colonial policy. In the early hours of 25 April 1974, the revolution began in the Portuguese city of Lisbon. The military forces quickly overwhelmed the government, sparking spontaneous demonstrations in the streets, in which civilians ran out to mingle with the soldiers, despite orders to stay inside. At the time, carnations were flooding the famous central flower market of Lisbon, and many citizens put them into the gun barrels of the soldiers, inspiring the name Coronation Revolution to describe this event in Portuguese history. It often happens when a government is overthrown, even with the support of the populace. Portugal underwent a period of instability after the Coronation Revolution. It took several years to create a strong democratic government, and during this period Portugal divested itself of almost all of its foreign colonies and underwent severe economic turmoil, as the dictatorship had controlled the Portuguese economy with such stranglehold that it took some time to stabilize. For the Portuguese and their former colonies, this was a very difficult period, but many feel that the short-term effects of the Coronation Revolution were well worth the trouble. Today, Portuguese celebrate the Freedom Day on 25th of April every year.
The 1st of January of 1986, Portugal entered EEC, European Economic Community. This entry represented a real economic openness and an increase of the population attitude. The state hadn't reformed almost anything. progress was great in terms of achieving many social rights, housing, health, education. The infrastructure began to renew itself at a good pace. The EEC in 1992 became the European Union. On the horizon, that meant the creation and appearance of a single currency, a common foreign policy, and a long-term political union, Federation of States. Portugal followed the entire process. Portugal joined the euro in 2002, which replaced the national currency, the escudo.